Hello and welcome to Aunt Lainey's Kitchen. I am here. It took me a little bit longer to get here today because apparently they have they're doing something where they make you confirm your age when you go live. And on my other accounts, because I was able to get 1,000 a while ago on those, I didn't have to do that. So I was like, wait, what's going on? So I did say I would finally go live, and I'm here. And as I explained in my video yesterday, this is like pantry cooking. It's cook with what you got. It's we buy stuff on sale. It's all those things that we do, okay? And so nothing is fancy. When there's someone that talks about brown cabinets, I have brown cabinets, but I do own my townhouse. So just again, that's what you're seeing. That's the kind of creator I am. It's like being at your auntie's house. But like your rich auntie, but your rich auntie that puts money into other things, not just, puts money into charities, like that kind of stuff. So I just want to kind of prep everybody. This is what you're about to see. It's not fancy. I can cook from scratch. I can do all those things with expensive ingredients, but I feel like in 2025, the best way for me to give back is to really support people that are going through like these grocery prices, to really support people that are trying to have the best life for themselves and their families. I am a kid. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a kid. I grew up primarily in the 80s. So I can remember when we would all pool our stuff together, and even people that were on the affluent side would do that as well. We just kind of were like more of a community, more of a collective. We did have some issues back then, so I'm not glossing that over. But when it came to food and cooking and stuff like that, we pretty much were like, everybody was kind of, I don't want to say nickel and diming, but we were all kind of watching the food and the sales and all that stuff. And there was some shame and having things that weren't homemade, but a lot of people were really busy and doing things. And so, there wasn't the expectation when I was a kid versus when my parents were kids of having that thing from scratch necessarily. So in that vein, I'm going to show you what I found on sale. Martha White chocolate chip muffin mix, and you just have to add milk. Now I know you're like, girl, milk is a luxury item. Well, I'm making some macaroni and cheese. And so I was like, gosh, I don't want to, then you have milk left over. I'm not a big milk drinker. So I thought, you know what, let me get something else that's going to help use this milk. So I'm going to put this in here. I think you can, let me come back a little bit. There you go. Okay. So we're putting this, it's a dry mix. And I would bet you could probably add water to it if you didn't have any milk. But they just put milk on there. But again, you can always add water. If you know, if you're a cook, you make do with what you got. Okay, so this is 1/3 of a cup right here. I'm gonna put that in there, and that's all you add. Like that's it. Like that's pretty much the whole thing. It's really simple. And I'm not gonna use, I've got like all these different baking pans, but I'm gonna keep it really simple. I like to use silicone, but sometimes silicone, it's really hard to clean that out. I'm gonna be honest with you. During the pandemic, I was gifted with these beautiful silicone baking pans, and which I love. And I don't turn down gifts, okay? But at the same time, and you know what, I'm already noticing that 1/3 of a cup, it's not really coming together. And I like to whisk versus it's not really coming together. I'm gonna add just a little bit more milk to it and see what happens. When it gets clumpy like that, I don't want to work with it. So it's just kind of, here we go, just a little bit more. I'm gonna put another 1/3 cup in there. So there we go, just to kind of give it a little bit something. Because that's the one thing about when you're doing this kind of stuff, it's like you get in there and you got to kind of, oops, I just splashed something over the side. That's okay. That's going to happen now. This is a little bit better. Now these are going to be a little runnier, but that's okay because they're going to be baked anyway. So it doesn't really matter to me. So I'm kind of whisking it in here, my prepackaged. Now, if you were feeling rich, and this is something that my grandmas and aunties always had, they always had that little extra package of chocolate chips. The ones that were rolled and like you could only use them like twice a year, and you're like, how good are these chocolate chips, right? I mean, how old are these? But again, it's like asking someone how old their spices are. That you get that look like, why are you in grown folks' business? So, but you could add, because they don't give you a ton of chocolate chips. Like they give you the essence of chocolate chips, but you're not getting like the full-on chocolate chip experience. But that's why pantry cooking is important, to have those chocolate chips if you can afford it. But also, here's my problem with chocolate chips. I cook from my pantry. So, if I'm craving something sweet, I don't want to go to a bakery if I know I have something sweet in my house. So I have been guilty of, taking those chocolate chips that I'm supposed to use for these kind of occasions and just kind of eating them out of the bag. I'm not going to lie. I am kind of ashamed of myself a little bit, but that's why I don't have any chocolate chips to put in there. Usually I do, but I think a couple weeks ago I got kind of snacky and the weather wasn't great. And I was like, gosh, you know, I'm a pantry cook. I can't just go out just for a cupcake or something like that. That's silly. So I went ahead and did kind of like mosh down on those chocolate chips that I had. But again, you know, if you've got more discipline than I do during the winter months, you know, having a little bag of chocolate chips to add to like baking products or whatever, just to have the additional, you know, you're going to be right on. You're going to be spot on. Okay. Now I'm going to bring this out. Very simple. Something I always do. And I'm kind of like, I feel like you can never have too many of these cupcake liners. And you should see my pantry. Like I have all these random cupcake liners because in my mind, it's like I don't have them. It's kind of like toilet paper. You know, before the pandemic, when people were freaking out, I was like, during the pandemic, I was like, what? Because I always forget when I have toilet paper. And so because I do, I always have extras, right? I was like, I was always having a ton. So during the pandemic, I was like, wow, I have probably like a month's worth, 2 months worth of toilet, just because I would forget and be like, do I have toilet paper? And that's one thing you don't want to not have. So, yeah, so just like that, I'm like this with cupcake liners. Now I like to use a scoop for everything. And just because because it kind of stays measured. And I used to use like one of those scoops, you know, like those half scoops. I think mine's in the dishwasher, but those half scoops, and they don't give you the same amount of accuracy. Now, if that's all you have, that's all you have. But I was like, well, let me go ahead and spend a little bit of money and put this in here. Now, I think I probably will need to. It says just 2/3 of the way, so I don't want to have exploding muffins here, but I'm probably going to end up having to use another pan as well, but that's okay. I can always do like another muffin pan. That's all good. So we're just going to do this 2/3, maybe a little bit more. And if you can, like I have different types, because my thing is like, I love kitchen things. Like I'm that person that goes to the restaurant and I'll take pictures of the plates, okay? And I'll take pictures of like the tablescapes, all that stuff, because it gives me inspiration. Okay, wait, you know what? We might not have to use, we probably don't have, hang on, wait a minute. Okay, so they did make it for 6. Now with this extra stuff, because you know I don't like to waste anything, what I'm gonna do is, see, I think, so I've got these in different sizes just for moments like this, because I don't like to waste anything. I mean, of course, within reason. Like, I'm not the auntie that's got the 15-year-old spices. It's like, girl, you got spices from a store that has not been open in 8 years. Come on now. I am not that auntie, but I do like, you know, if it's something like this, I am definitely going to try to get everything out of there. My paternal grandma would say, well, you know, you got to get everything out because that's the difference between someone not, you know, getting a second cookie. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and at the time I was like, oh my gosh, that's so devastating. They're not going to get a second cookie. Okay, so I'm going to go off camera for like 2 seconds. I'm back. So that was for I preheated the oven for 400 as the temperature, and then it's like, I think they said somewhere between 14 and 16 minutes. But again, you always have to be careful with that, because sometimes your oven may or may not, like, you know, you might have a more powerful oven, or maybe you don't have a powerful oven. So always kind of like, you know, get to know your oven. It's very important. So now my next thing I'm going to do is I've got these peppers that I need to cut up. And I'm going to take this stuff off camera here. I've got these peppers to cut up. And I know sometimes what happens is now they like at places like Aldi's and Hy-Vee, they have like peppers like these. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to use them. And then like a week goes by, you're like, I'm not using all of them. So now I'm going to cut them all up and make it easier for me to put them into my meal prep meals. Okay, let's see here. I'm just gonna So these are already kind of looking a little sad, but that's okay because we're going to cut these up. And I always say cut them to how you're going to eat them. Some people like to do strips, and I am not a strips person unless, you know, I've got something that requires the strips. I will just chop them up, you know, like, and get them down, because what I'm going to do is after I cut them up, I'm going to put them in a cast iron skillet with like a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And I'll season them a little bit, like with little basil, little pepper. When I'm seasoning things that are going to be ingredients, because I like to keep my ingredients separate, so it's kind of like a grandma situation, old school Midwestern grandma situation, where you've got everything separate, and then they cook like the entree, and then they put things together, because that way things last longer and you don't get weird tastes. I find that if I cook something up, quote unquote, for the week, and then it's like by that third day, it's like, whew, these peppers are just like not peppering. But if I keep them separate and I just add them as I need them, it's a way better kind of deal for me. Let's see here, pull these out. Okay, now these do have seeds in them, so I'm just gonna kind of cut away the seeds here. This is what I do. I know I've seen people do different things. This is kind of how I deal with the seed situation. And I'll also, when I'm off camera and I'm done, I'll kind of wash these again, get the seeds off of them. But that's what I like to do, because, you know, these days things are coming in these bigger packages, and it's harder just to buy like one or two of something. Or if you're in a place like I'm in that has winter, you're like, let me just go ahead and have some extra stuff. Or if you've got a pretty big family that you're dealing with, that you're cooking for multiple people, that may not be in your household, which, you know, community cooking, which I am all for. When we were young, there was an older lady that lived in our apartment building, and my parents had just gotten divorced. And so my mom, who was super busy, like, you know, raising two kids and like going to school, getting her master's in the 80s before internet schooling, she had to drive an hour to do it, work, you know, taught all day, all that stuff. She'd always make sure that that lady had food. She'd like, you know, and then she was working with the ladies, you know, I think nephew was taking care of her, somebody like that. And so she always kind of made sure, like, especially when we made things like macaroni and cheese and hamburger, that's like one of the classic recipes that my mom, like if we were having a sleepover, if we were having a lot of like cousins come over and stay with us, because back in the day, I feel like people thought hotels were just evil. So, hey, just come to our like 3-bedroom house with 25 people. I'm exaggerating, but not by a lot. And so those were kind of her go-to things, like the casseroles, all that stuff, because she knew that would last a couple days. We'd kind of eat on that for a couple days. And so whenever she made those big meals like that a couple times a week, she'd go in and she'd have me run it over to, you know, the lady and everything like that. And so again, community cooking, I hope that more people are able to do that, since, you know, things are kind of uncertain right now with so many things, and you know, food prices, all that stuff. So just kind of something to like think about, you know, doing the community cooking kind of thing, helping each other out. I did say in my video that I made yesterday, my 8-minute video, I did talk about how I do want to do something where I kind of do some food pantry cooking, like what you get. And I know a lot of places you don't get fresh produce and all that stuff, but I do have canned goods. And I know a lot of places give you like canned green beans or canned corn or something like that. And so I'm going to be, you know, doing that kind of thing. I've got a 1 burner and a 2 burner, because I stated in my video yesterday, some people have situations where they don't have the use of a full kitchen for whatever reason. And so I want to be really mindful of that. There's a lady on here, I cannot remember her name, but she is the one, she does like disability friendly cooking. Plus she does these reimaginations of like certain meals. Like I think she did the beans on toast, and she really rocked it. I was like, man, she kind of made some people mad, but I was like, oh my gosh, now if that was beans on toast, I would totally do that. Let's see here. So I'm just going to take these off. Now, I did talk about strips versus chunks, but I think right now, because I need to clean up all these seeds, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of like stick to the strips, and then later on I will chop these up into smaller pieces. Get this off here. Chop these up into smaller pieces, and then they are going to see the cast iron skillet, and I could probably do that you know, tomorrow if I can do that. It's just so crazy right now, because everybody, I feel like, has a birthday. And I feel like and again, I'm not complaining about being invited to birthday parties, but I'm like, dang it, another birthday, dang. So I just, I could probably do it. I'm like thinking it out, and I'm like working it out in my head. Okay, let's see here. So yeah, cast iron skillets, and again, those are pretty easy to find. A good cast iron skillet, a good kind of soup pot, whether it's big or small, whatever your budget is. And you can get those at Dollar General, actually. I don't see them at Dollar Tree like I used to back in the day, but you can get them at Dollar General. Okay, take these off. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so some of the things that I do cook with before I let you go, because what I'll do is when these come out of the oven, I will take a picture and I'll post it on my Aunt Lainey's Kitchen. But so some of the things I cook with, of course, I do have a 4-burner electric stove, and I have like a pretty decent oven situation. I also cook with an air fryer. That's more of a recent thing because I really did try to fight it because I am more of a baker. But in the summertime, you don't want to be sitting there baking and sweating. It's like throw that in the air fryer and get on with your life. I also have a crock pot, but I only use that crock pot for parties. So I don't really use it on a regular basis. I'm just not a crock pot person. I've got great nostalgic memories of the crock pot, but I just don't, in my daily life, I don't really use the crock pot. I used to use a toaster oven, but my toaster oven was like 10 years old and it was starting to smoke and get all weird. And so I had to get rid of it because I thought this might be a fire hazard. But toaster ovens are pretty good as well if you don't have a lot of space, but you need to read the instructions because sometimes they can be really dangerous. It's not something you can walk off. You really, to me, if you're doing a toaster oven situation, you need to stay in the same room. You need to monitor it. Like I would say that even if you got your toaster oven in 2025, just kind of keep an eye on it because it is a counter item. And I would even say that for an air fryer too. Just kind of keep an eye on things. And then something else I have is I have a panini maker, and I've cooked up with that before if you're following me when I was doing these on Quaint and Cozy KC. And so what that does is basically, I mean, and it's not a fancy one. It's like the $50 one where you plug it in the wall, it starts to heat up immediately. So I use that for grilled cheese sandwiches. I use that for quesadillas. I use that to actually, and this is going to sound really, really old school, but you know those leftover hot dog buns and hamburger buns that don't get used and you don't have any sandwich meat to kind of put in there, you don't have any kind of situation like that, then what I do with those is I actually, oil the panini maker a little bit. I put them on there, then I slice them and they make a nice crusty bread. You can actually get a little pizza sauce if you've got that, a little marinara sauce, or if you don't have any of that, you can make a nice bread plate with like some extra virgin olive oil. If you got any garlic, that you can roast a little garlic or cook up a little garlic, put it on there. Or you can get like extra virgin olive oil, maybe put some rosemary, some dried rosemary down, or some basil. That's a nice little bread plate situation. But that's what I do so that I don't waste any bread. I used to make a hot dog bruschetta. That's what I called it. And I would take all these like leftover peppers and like tomatoes and all that stuff. I put a little bit of a sear on them. Then I put them, this was before the panini maker, then I put them on top of the hot dog that I had, baked for a little bit to kind of give it like a crunch. Or I put it in a cast iron skillet, kind of covered it to give it a crunch. And so that was actually pretty good. And I actually let one of my friends, try my hot dog bruschetta, and they actually like, this is actually pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, we're not wasting any food. We're doing the pantry cooking situation. We are, trying to save money as much as we can. But here's the thing about saving money. One of the downfalls that I thought as a kid is sometimes I would get to someone's house and they were saving money and they're doing the best they could, but it was so spare and so stark and, whatever. And I'd be like, man, they don't really season their food. They're really into the simplified cooking, and there's no judgment there. Again, everyone was trying to make it back then and I guess today, but I really want myself if I have to save money, I want to do it in style. I want to do it with a little flair. I want to do it with a little pizzazz, because otherwise you're just eating gruel every day. And that just gets you really sad. And also for me, when I get sad like that, I'm like, it doesn't matter. And then I'm door dashing like an $150 burger and fries situation. So, again, this is just for my own mental health too. Like I've got to keep it fun. I got to keep it light. And, so, I went to some of my old recipes that I remember from childhood. So I've been writing those down. And, because this is Aunt Lady's Kitchen, so I'm just going to be telling y'all what to do. If you can do that, if you can figure out recipes that you grew up with, that's a nice thing to pass on to your family, whether or not you have kids or whatever. That's a nice kind of thing. It's a nice love letter from when the older generations are gone, they still have that. So yeah, something to think about. Maybe you can't will your people land, a lot of riches, but you can gift them with recipes. And if you don't know recipes, maybe for sure, maybe you remember how apples were a part of, your life, or they did a lot with onions or potatoes, a big potato thing. And maybe you create that to pass that along. Again, something to think about from Aunt Lainey's Kitchen. I am going to run and because I have to do some more podcast blogging things, because I do have like a day job Monday through Friday that I'm very blessed to have. I am a senior level paralegal. And so that's kind of what I do 5 days a week. And I love it so much. But I also love this. So with that note, take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.